There's a in the country every 11 minutes. And every time there is a death by, there's about 135 people that are affected by it, friends, family, colleagues. First phase is isolation, not showing up at events, not showing up at family events. 85% of the people that are going down that path, when they engage with somebody, they are successful at not death by. We would build relationships. We would let guys get their story out. There was a constant association with the organization to help keep guys out of isolation. You're not alone. It's okay to seek out help. God's got a plan for you, and He's got promises. No matter what you think, your life is valuable. There's a purpose.
Tony, welcome to the show. I'm glad to have you.
Aaron, I'm so happy that you have us on. You know, we have an important message, and the ability to do podcasts like this and get our message out is very important to me. It's part of our cause and our mission. And I just want to thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
You know what? The appreciation is all on this side of the microphone. What you're doing for our first responders and military, it's especially having not been, having worn the uniform yourself, it's pretty incredible. How deep the level of service goes with you. So thank you for agreeing to come on the show.
Well, you know, I'm happy to be on it. I've been working in the space for about a decade, but really in the last year, we've really ramped up and decided how we want to tackle this whole space. You know what? There's a in the country every 11 minutes. And every time there is a death by, there's about 135 people that are affected by it. Friends, family, colleagues, business associates, in schools. There's a death in a family of a student. It still affects it ripples through the whole community. And so as I've been in this space and I've looked at how we could best attack it, how we could best help mitigate, I believe it's to be able to empower a lot of people in a community that have an awareness of what the factors are that contribute to death by, and to look at, there's sort of a process that happens, and what are some of the identifiers and what are some of the drivers. So I've just written a book, and my book has just come out, and it's really written for family and friends of veterans and first responders. And it kind of breaks down how to identify who's at risk, how to enter into a conversation, and then how to help them get help. But, the spectrum, one of the things that I look at is first phase is isolation. And guys will get in deep, deep isolation. And there's a way to tell. They'll start not showing up at events, not showing up at family events. Their personal hygiene, they let it go. They just don't see any way out. They don't care. And that's one phase we try to work with to get people engaged and involved in something. You know, even if it's coffee every Tuesday morning with a bunch of vets at McDonald's, then it's something that they can look forward to. When I started in the space, I was actually consulting to an organization called Project Hero, Ride to Recovery. And we did cycling events, bicycles. And we would take 150 to 200 vets, and we'd ride from like San Antonio, Texas to Houston, about 800 miles. We do legs like that. Jacksonville, Florida, Atlanta, it'd be maybe 1,000 miles. And the whole purpose of that was to build relationships. And we have guys that were double hand cranks, and we broke them up into categories. So we'd have guys that would push them. But we would build relationships. We would let guys get their story out. And there was a constant association with the organization to help keep guys out of isolation. So that was my introduction into the space, into really helping and getting down hands-on with it. And so I learned a couple other things. One of the things I'll tell you is that I am not a veteran. And so I had a lot of apprehension about getting in an organization that dealt with veterans. And what I found, and I think this is important, because what I found was that people were just happy that you were there to help and listen. And they didn't care whether you had served or not. And in my message, I try to bring that forward, because there's a lot of people in the community that maybe sometimes they don't reach out to somebody. They'll see a veteran that's getting depressed or is isolated, and they don't reach out because they're afraid they won't be accepted because they're not a veteran. And so my message is, um, that's not, in my case, it's not true. We had a lot of volunteers and a lot of guys that weren't veterans, but they were accepted well. And so in my first going down this pathway, that was very important. So in our symposiums that we do and the book we've written is looking at things that drive people, things that happen to them, life events, whether it's they're in chronic pain, whether it's loss of a loved one, whether it's financial struggles, things that start to get people isolated and depressed. Now, I'm just outside of Palm Springs, California, and we have a Marine base here, 29 Palms. And so one of the things I'll find is that guys will come back and have PTSD and they have a hard time getting a job or fitting in the community. But then also they end up, they have relationship problems. So they end up in a divorce, and then they end up with maybe a child custody battle. And then they're fighting with the VA. And so things tend to compound. So a lot of times it's just not one issue that'll start to take somebody down this path. So we have the path of isolation, we have depression, and then we have to deal with drugs and alcohol. And that'll blur somebody's vision of what they're doing and what their chances are at their life and how to work on it. So as well as anybody, struggling with those battles and how to overcome them. I mean, you've been through it, you get it. So what we're trying to do is to look at a community and say, how can we take and empower people to be able to take and reach out and to have their radar up. And we're not trying to create a lot of psychologists or psychiatrists, but we'd like to get people that would support or help somebody and then help them get help. And then there's
what was it? Oh, sorry. What was it in those early runs that showed you that listening was really without judgment could change lives, turn people around from making that sacrifice?
Well, there's our organization. So our website is helpingheroesusa.org. And if somebody needs to reach out, they can reach out to us. And certainly we can plug them into different things that we're doing. And whether it's golf clinics, we do golf tournaments, we do golf clinics. We work with a lot of other organizations. We think that that's the way to do it. If people have the same purpose and the same cause, we can refer people into organizations. So that's what we want to do. And we want to make it easy for the families to understand that if they're dealing with somebody that's had TBI and then they've got PTSD, and that there's some things that they need to deal with and step back sometimes and go, okay, their behavior is because of this. Let me just take a step back and understand what's going on. And, getting help or how to start that conversation, that's really important. One thing is that there's a stigma out there that people say, don't talk to anybody about it because you're going to make them think about it and drive them down that path. And that's really not true. Every year there's 12 million people that think about or try it and they fail. That's a good thing. They don't accomplish their goal. But there's also another statistic that says that 85% of the people that are going down that path, when they engage with somebody, they are successful at not death by. So it's a very high number of people just getting some help or finding out somebody cares. And so that's what we want to stand in that gap. We want to create a lot of people that care, a lot of people that have some sort of skill set. And that's another thing that, a lot of times people don't want to approach somebody. They might have a friend or something. They see they're getting isolated. They're really depressed, but they don't know how to approach them. So they don't. So we teach skills, things to say, I care about you. And I just, I want to know if something's going on for you. Is there something I can help? As opposed to saying, I really noticed lately that your behavior is, threatening. Or to say, you're thinking about it because you're just trying to get attention. So those kind of phrases they don't work. So what we do is in our workshops and in our book, we give examples of how to engage in that conversation. We also give examples uh, if you start engaging with somebody and it just seems like it's combative, that maybe you find somebody else. You know, if it's a veteran and they make a statement like, and I only have heard this a couple times, is that you really don't understand, you've never been there, then find a veteran that's been there. There's
Hmm.
12,000 American Legion posts around the country. There's another, I don't know, 5,000 VFW posts. And I guarantee if you call up one of those and say, hey, I've got a buddy that needs to talk to a veteran, they'll help you. They'll support you. So those are the kind of things that we're advocating in our organization, and ways to help somebody get out of depression and help them get a little bit better outlook. Uh, Even doing minimal things will help. Having some sort of schedule will help. Uh, I share the story. One of the things I learned from my dad was my dad lived to be 90. My mom passed away at 75. So
Hmm.
there was a long time that he lived alone. But what he did was every Wednesday he took his car to the car wash. He lived in Burbank. He'd drive his car like 3 miles, go to the car wash, come back, put it in the garage. But it was a way for him to get out every Wednesday. He got out. And he got a couple of pensions. And what he would do is take those to the bank because he liked to go in there and talk to everybody at the bank. So those are just things that kept him going. 25 years after my mom passed away, or 20 years after that, but he had those little things, and so it's a lot of times it's just little things that you can encourage people to do to help get them out of that depression. The other thing is that as a saying that we have is that attitude affects your behavior, and your behavior affects your attitude. So if you can just get out a little bit, if you got somebody that can get out of the house, walk if they can walk, if they can still get out, that just helps their behavior, which will help their attitude and help get them out of depression. So that's some of the things we're working at. We like to, when we walk away, we close a symposium or workshop. We want people to feel empowered. We don't want it to be like a Debbie Downer. Like I just went to this, I went to this event and they talked about death. And no, I went to this event and I picked up some tips on how I might reach out and help somebody, how I can have things on my radar. Um, as a cyclist, we would a bunch of us would always ride. We'd ride on Saturdays. And one Saturday, we just finished a ride, I don't know, 60, 70 miles. We come back to the parking lot. We're loading our bikes in the cars and trucks. And one of the guys says, hey, I'd like to take you guys to lunch today. And everybody's like, yeah, okay. And then he says, well, it might be the last time we get together. Well, there's a red flag. So about 4 or 5 of us went because when he said it might be the last time we get together, he's down that path. And this is like the last time he's going to see us. So there's things to look at to get your radar up. And that's what we want to do. We want to get the radar up for a lot of people.
What are some of the signs people tend to miss or don't know to recognize when somebody starts going down that path?
Yeah, well, there's things like, number one, you'll start to notice people give some of their things away. Guys will give away medals. Guys will give away, they start to get their financial things in order. And so
Hmm.
they're thinking about it. They're searching on the internet for maybe some ways to do it, to end their life. They're making statements like, nobody will miss me. It doesn't really matter. I'm overwhelmed. I don't see any way out. So those are all red flags that they're going down that path. They're thinking about going down the path. And that's when you need to jump in and start a conversation. And the conversation is very gentle. The most important thing about the conversation is it's not judgmental, and it comes from a position of caring. You have a friendship, a relationship, family member, and you care about them. And you
Hmm.
just maybe noticed a few things and you want to discuss it. And what I found in my experience is that people want to share. They really do, as long as they feel safe. They have some trust for you. They feel like you're not going to judge them. It's amazing how they'll open up and they'll start to talk about it. And one of the things we talk about, the truth is that when all these things are going on, that person may have the answer to their salvation. It's just that they don't get an opportunity to really share it with somebody. They feel overwhelmed. They feel like there's no way out. But in the back of their mind, they kind of know there is. We talk a lot about faith. We talk about how God has a plan for you. We talk about, believing in God, believing in his promises. And those are things that are important. They're important in our organization. Another identifier that we use, and it's a cycle. It's called victim, persecutor, rescuer. What'll happen is you'll start to hear somebody's conversation and they're a victim to everything and everybody. They're doing this to me. This didn't work out. It's not my fault. They're victim. And then they get pushed down so much that then they come out swinging, and they become a persecutor, and they start yelling at people. They're hostile. They're angry, and then they feel bad because they yelled at somebody. They feel bad because they hurt their feelings. So then they become a rescuer. Then they try to overly be nice to you. So when somebody's in that cycle, the key is we got to get them out of victim. We want to break the cycle. We don't let them want to be the victim. We want to understand that they're feeling this victim. They're lost. They're pushed down, and they've got to get themselves back up to a level playing field. These are kind of the processes that we go through to train people. I mean, ultimately, my goal is I'd love to have a large percentage of people in every community that is ready to help somebody and identifies when somebody's going through this.
I did not want to become one of those disabled veterans that just sat on the couch feeling sorry for himself. I've always loved being creative. My creative spark was in the kitchen. I loved making others happy with the food I've made. And with this business, I can share that with so many more people.
Order now at eodfudge.com. What about, and this is, I think, across the board when it comes to men, especially capable men in these defense, protection, rescue roles, that they're like the stoic, silent, I can do anything. I'm the responsible one. I'll figure this out until the pressure just breaks.
That's an excellent point. And when I tell that, when I start to hear that, like I'm strong, I've led thousands of men. I've led hundreds of men. I'm strong. I can deal with this. And I always say this: the top producers, the best athletes, all have coaches, and it's okay. It's not. It's a sign of brilliance. It's not a sign of weakness. In my business, I've got people, and on the financial side, the product side, social media side, they run different parts of it. You certainly can't just be out on an island and try to do it all yourself. And if somebody's going down that path, there's things there that are happening. It's relationships, whether it's health reasons, it's chronic pain sometimes, it's dealing with those kind of handicaps that they just have struggling with, and they don't want to get help. It's a lot of times it's financial. They don't want to get help, and they need to get help, and they need to figure out it's okay, because the top producers have coaches. Take any industry out there, CEOs, presidents, corporations, top athletes in any sport have a coach, and that's okay. So if you're feeling like, man, I can handle this, I've got like 20 problems going on, I can handle it alone, you can't. It's okay to get a coach.
Are there steps we can take to, say, prevent this? If maybe we see or recognize some of that language, is there a way to approach it in the most tactful way? Is it something about the language we use?
Yeah, I think it's one of the most important things that you're hitting on is, how do I approach this with somebody? And I think it's what we found that opens people up. It's coming to them and saying, I really care about you. And I just want to talk to you. And maybe, your behavior is a little different. You've kind of changed a little bit. How can I be supportive? As opposed to coming at them and saying there's something wrong with you. You're doing this. You're not being accusatory, not being judgmental, and just coming from a caring position that you're just concerned and you just like to talk. And that'll open up a dialogue. And in my book, we have a lot of phrases. Here's a way to start the conversation. Here's things to say. Here's different points to bring up that'll help you engage in conversation. And I think that's a lot of times the biggest barrier. The other thing is tell people that you're not alone. In other words, if you identify somebody that's at risk, you don't have to be alone. You don't have to be the only one to work with them. You want to help them get help. That's okay. Just be a helper. Just help them get help. Connect them. A lot of times it's just a matter of, helping them pick up the phone and dial in, 988 and hitting 1 if you're a veteran. And maybe somebody doesn't want to take that step. But if you're there to support them in doing it, they will.
I know some people are afraid of being direct. Is it taboo? Is it incorrect to just ask them outright if they're planning on doing something drastic? Are they planning on committing?
To approach it is just to tell them that you care and you want to know. You can ask them, say, are you having thoughts? Are you having subtle thoughts? That's okay. And they may just slough it off and say, no, you're going to know if the answer is honest or not.
Mm-hmm.
Or they might say yes, and they're open up. They'll say, yes, I've thought about it. And then they'll follow it up with somebody like, it doesn't matter. No, nobody's going to miss me. So now they've thought about it a little bit more. Now you know what they're feeling. And so that conversation is just critical. And you have to have it. Because I'll tell you what, one of the things that really drives me in space is that I run into people that say, I wish I would have known. If I only knew, I would have helped them. If I only would have known how, I would have helped them. And they carry around this guilt. And I run into people that, 40 years ago, they've lost a loved one. They've lost their best buddy. And then they're kind of kicking themselves going, I wish I would have known. I wish I would have said something. So that's what we're trying to give people skills. People don't move forward and don't help because they have a fear. They have a fear of rejection. They have a fear they don't know what to say. I don't know how to approach this. And so what our mission is to get to as many people as we can and say, look, here's some skills. Here's just some, techniques that you can use to open up a conversation. And from that point on, it's a matter of helping them get help.
Is there anything they can do to maybe give them extra space, a little extra time to think before doing anything drastic?
Excellent point. That the number one method of death by is of the firearm. And so we encourage people to, and of course in the veteran first responder population, there's a high amount of firearms. Mm-hmm. So it's to ask people, say, look, can we put that gun in a gun safe? Can I have a combination? Is there a way I can take that away from while you're feeling like this? Is there some way? Let me take that away. Let me hold that for you. Because that's problematic. The other thing is people will store, another method is they'll take prescription drugs and they start storing them up. They don't take them. And that's something to be aware of too. If you're in the same house with somebody, that you start to see that they're getting a stockpile of drugs. But holding onto the gun, knowing that you care, if they have a gun safe, maybe being able to get the combination you have the combination, until they can maybe get out of this deeper depression, get out of isolation, and start moving forward. There's programs out there. I heard of one program that we're exploring right now where they've gone to a safe manufacturer, has gone in partnership with some cleaners, clothes cleaners, mm-hmm. and they put safes in. And so they'll take and hold the gun for a period of time until somebody feels like that's not a problem anymore. So, I mean, there are some proactive things out there. And yeah, firearms are a problem. Um, and you hit it right on the head. It's like, how can I get that? Can I just take that from me for a while? Let me take the ammunition for a while. Uh, and the good thing about that is you're starting to get into a conversation to try to help them get out of that funk, out of that depression, and starting to see that there's a way out.
I do know that the VA provides free barrel locks to veterans for their firearms, at least the handguns. They gave some to my wife and me. Just asked if we had firearms and handed a couple over.
See, and those are the kind of things that a person that we're talking to, we call support angels. That's something you can help somebody go through that process. They may not want to do it on their own. They might not be proactive, but you're there to support. And it's okay. Here's what I'm going to do. Let's go to the VA. Let's get these guns locked up. That's an excellent point. You're right on point with that. And just giving somebody that support and helping them, standing in the gap, that's what we're encouraging. We just are trying to get as many people to look at the space and to understand how they can support people and help people that are thinking about death by.
I also know that this TBI, PTSD, depression, it all kind of gets lumped together. There's a big gray area there. Are there any street level ways to convince somebody that what they're going through is treatable, that maybe to differentiate what they're going through and, maybe what's impermanent versus permanent?
Well, myself, I'm a TBI sufferer. And what I found was there was ways to. The biggest problem with TBI, or I don't know if it's the biggest problem, but one of the problems that impacted me was the fact that it was just memory loss, just simple things, like trying to remember phone numbers, just trying to remember people's names, just very frustrating. And I found there was ways to work to train your brain, to kind of bring that back. It's a skill. And you just have to keep working at it. So there's a way out. PTSD, to understand that when you start to go into that cycle, that you're in that, it's something that maybe it's out of your control. And how can you mitigate that? How can you take things away that we worked with a couple of colleges on. There's some technology out there, and it's one of the things we want to break forward is some of the technology that will help indicate when somebody's starting to physically start to go into a PTSD attack, and how to be aware of that. And this is what's happening. And but you're right, it's difficult. It's not only prevalent from the military, but in first responders, but also in sports. I'm an ex-football coach. I coach football at UCLA at a major level, and I've been involved in that fitness space, football training space, and there's a lot of studies. I went through when originally the helmet manufacturers were being sued, and nobody wanted to manufacture helmets anymore because of concussions and where it would lead to PTSD. And so there's been a lot of improvements and things around that, and but it's out there, and people suffer from that, and they need to overcome those physical problems.
Yeah, I just it's hard to convince somebody that it's hard to know how to convince somebody that it's injury, they're not broken. And that it is treatable. Because I know I had TBI also after the blast, memory issues, even emotions change. That TBI, depression, ambivalence, right, disinterest, but it can be, it can be treated. It's a big challenge because at that time it feels like you're trapped and there's no other way out.
It's just being honored, here with you on this podcast, and knowing the adversity that you've overcome, I mean, I think you're a voice that could ring out and tell people that there's two things that I've always learned. One is that purpose, and if the purpose is to overcome this, then there's process. So there's purpose and process, and so somewhere you discovered the process to overcome, and your purpose was to live as full of life as you could live, and by doing this podcast, it's amazing. So you have a secret. You understand the process of how to get from, complete injury to overcoming. You've got that. And so that's a message that needs to be heard. You're right. And helping people along, I mean, taking your message and what you know. Maybe I should be interviewing you. You understand the process on how to overcome a lot of these things. And that's a message to be shared. That's encouragement. That's a lot of encouragement for people. That's what happens. Sometimes people just get to the point where they just don't see a way out. And a little bit of encouragement will take them out of that, and they'll get on the right path. I mean, at the end of the day, the way we're built is we want to survive. We really do. And it's just getting in that right environment that supports that.
It's a tough thing to come to grips with. Tough, capable, strong, smart people in what it seems like an unsolvable situation, because they're the ones that solve the problems. I keep flashing back to it was a couple of years ago. One of my EOD brothers, and somebody I know, but within the community, they posted instructions on Facebook of what to do after he was gone, and they were concise. Tell my wife, my daughter, my boss, here's what to do with this, and this. And then they grabbed a weapon and they stepped out to his front yard and he did the deed. And it was a shock to the whole community. The comments in the group all the way down were, who's near him, who can reach, his house, all that kind of stuff. And I just found out that he just didn't hesitate. He posted that, he was ready to go, and he did it. And throughout the community, throughout I don't know who knew him, but everybody was trying to figure out what they'd missed and how they could have, how could it have been avoided.
The thing is that you're not going to get 100%, but if we can encourage and get more people to understand more of what's going on, there's one that we remember. When I say we, it's my partners, my business partners, and we help guys sometimes. We had somebody that was losing their house, and the landlord just wouldn't back off, and we're trying to get him back off, and we're trying to get another, we're trying to get him into a hotel and transition him to another house, and just this landlord wouldn't back off, and finally, he did the same thing. He grabbed the gun, and we were days away from getting him another place to live. And so that's hard because you knew you were close, right? You knew that it had become a heightened situation. It wasn't somebody that was just sort of thinking about it. They were serious, and we were trying to stop that. And so those are hard, and there is fallout, and it is hard. And what happens is some of those people become at risk. You lose a friend that way, and then you become a risk. So that's why we just try to reach as many people as we can. It's just, what we can do is get out there and give people the message and skills and see if they can just reach out and help their fellow man. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Well, tell me more about the organization. Tell me more about what you do. Is it education? Is it counseling? What is it? How do you serve?
What I see our organization as in some ways, a marketing organization that we have a broad message. We get out there and we deliver our message to as many people as we can, and we try to connect them No, so we're not a counseling organization. We're not psychologists, psychiatrists. We're not drug rehab centers. But once we identify that somebody needs that help, then we connect them. So on the forefront, we're like the first point of attack, so to speak. We're going to be out there. We're going to be spreading the message. We're going to tell people that you're not alone. There's organizations to help. I mean, certainly we're going to stay with somebody. We had this one Marine at the 29 Palms, and the day that he was going to get the information, he had a child custody battle going on. And the day he was going to find out if he won or lost that, we just hung with him. We went to lunch, we stayed with him. We went to some meetings, took him to some meetings with us, just because we didn't want him to be alone if he got bad news, because we knew he was on a slippery slope. So there's things like that our organization does. But our organization essentially is we do workshops, symposiums. A lot of times we've been hired by the Association of Builders and Contractors to go into their corporate offices and do workshops on prevention. And the construction industry has one of the highest rates of any major industry. So you've got guys, you have a lot of veterans in that space. You have guys working alone. You have, it's physical, they can get injured. And there's drugs and alcohol that are prevalent. So you have a high rate of death by in the construction industry. So we're working with the association to get our message out and to help them help people.
Your book, Silent Battle. Tell me more about that, and what does that aim to do?
Silent Battle, it's on Barnes & Noble. So anybody can access it through our website or can access it through Barnes & Noble. It's 9 chapters that break down step by step in 3 areas. Number 1, identifying the risk, people at risk. And it goes into a lot of things. There's a lot of examples. There's like an example of a wife that all of a sudden noticed her husband was starting to give away a lot of his awards and medals. And all of a sudden she realized that, wait a minute, he's going down this path. So there's a lot of examples like that in the book. And it really, the first part of it is identifying. Second part is how to engage in that conversation. And it goes into a lot of depth about that and what resources are out there. It also has a scale to indicate, there's maybe somebody just thinking about it, but there's somebody that's really close. Like any day they can, what do you do? So there's information on there. What do you do in that situation? And it talks about PTSD. It talks about TBI and how that affects somebody and how you can interact with somebody that has that. And so it's really it's an educational one. And I wanted to write it for, I just come across so many friends and family members that, and to me, that I think that's the best way for us to get the masses engaged. I have people that, here's something. You're working with somebody that's maybe lives 4 or 5 states away. It's an old friend that's moved away. One of the situations right now is that a guy was married for like 40 years and his wife passed away. Now he's alone, drinking a lot. And so his friend is here down in Palm Springs. And so they're working over the phone, and trying to stay in contact over the phone and trying to plug them into a local group. Trying to, something that fits what they would like to do. And again, we've got a group. We have a guy he attempted to commit, shot himself in the head, but he didn't die. Turned his life around. So what he does is he's got a bunch of coffee groups, and he's all over the place, having lunch and coffee and everything, and just meeting with groups. The thing about meeting with the groups is that it gets somebody accountable, gives them somewhere to go, knows that there's some guys out there to talk to and they care. And so that's important. That's why American Legion posts are important for a lot of guys. There's 12,000 around the country, and they'll plug into that, and they know that they can go there and sit and talk to buddies and stay accountable and get some help. So those are the things that, that we advocate, is getting involved in some of the veterans organizations. And I've heard stories, a lot of times guys don't want to share these atrocities that they've been through with their family, but they'll share them with their buddies. And one thing reminds me of, I was with a guy and his dad passed away. He's down in San Diego. And at the funeral, he heard all these stories that his dad had been sharing for years down at the local American Legion, and combat things and things that he was involved in and skirmishes. And he said, I just never knew that about my dad. He would just never talk about that at home, but he had talked to these buddies and they shared all that with the son. And so you need to be aware of that too. To if you have a relationship with somebody, encourage them. If they're doing things, if they're going to lunch with buddies or whatever it is, you encourage them to keep doing that, because they may not want to bring those stories home, but they want to share them and get them out.
Well, it's good to have community, right?
That's right. That's right. Community support. Encourage guys to get involved in churches. Churches have bereavement missions. And I happen to go to a mega church. We run about 12,000 people a weekend. And we must have 7 or 8 different bereavement meetings going on every week. And, somebody can get in there. You're dealing with a loss, and it's a loved one that's lost. It could be recent. It could be in the past. But it's good to get in with a group of people that understand that, and they know how to talk about it, and you get some help. And it's easy. You just show up. Doesn't cost anything.
And Tony, what haven't I asked you yet that I should have?
You've been great, Aaron. You've been great. You've touched on all the major points. If I were to look here and have a script, I would say that you really have. You've helped us get our message out, and our message is either to somebody that's going down the path, is it's okay to approach somebody and talk to them, or somebody that knows somebody that's going down the path. And that's really what it's about, is really being able to open up and just get a dialogue going, and then help point them in the right direction. It's not that difficult. And I think the thing is that there's been a taboo around this, and people don't want to talk about it. And, they're afraid that's going to generate somebody's interest in it. But the reality is, and what I found is that talking about it. So from a show host, Aaron, you've hit on everything. You've asked me all the questions that information that we want to get out, and how we want to help people, and how we want to educate families to help someone in their family. So it's great. I would say this is one of the best informational interviews I've done. And I've done probably almost a podcast a day. My mission is to get the word out. So no, you touched on a lot of good points.
What is an important message?
I think the most important message is, at the end of the day, number one is that you're not alone. Number two, it's okay to seek out help. Number three, God's got a plan for you, and He's got promises. And if you think He doesn't, then you need to learn a little bit more about Him. And and no matter what you think, your life is valuable. There's a purpose, and you don't know how many people are watching you. And you can be an inspiration to somebody without even knowing it or never knowing it. But stay the course. I mean, that's my message.
Well, I'm blind. I never know who's watching me.
Well, I mean, that's a good thing.
So I think that's a great place to go into our final segment, the countdown to impact. This is 3 books, 2 quotes, and 1 person who have all made an impact in your life.
I talk a little bit about my background of being a football coach. And I've been very fortunate to be around some very successful. When I was at UCLA, the head football coach was Dick Vermeil. And, he went on from UCLA to the Philadelphia Eagles. He went to the Super Bowl, retired, came back out, went to the Rams, went to Super Bowl, went to Kansas City Chiefs. So I learned a lot of things from Dick. I learned a lot from him. He's a great guy. I'll tell you, one of the most important things I learned was that one night we were watching football films, and I happened to be alone with him. And it's like a big honor. You're alone with a guy that's truly a mentor that you look up to. We were watching films, and he said to me, he goes, "What are you looking at?" And I said, "Well, I'm kind of watching the tackle and what he's doing." And he goes, "No." He goes, "Look, let me tell you something. There's only 2 reasons why a football play doesn't work. You have the wrong play called, or you have the wrong personnel. And I said, wow, that's amazing. So when I got in business, I owned a company called Duraflex Sports Products. I sold it to Carlson Industries, $8 billion conglomerate. We made 6,000 skateboards a day and 60,000 pieces of exercise equipment a month. Big company. But I always learned this lesson. So I'd look at everything. I'd look at a marketing plan, and I'd say, do we have the right play call? And if we do we have the right people to execute it? Do we have the right personnel? And that's been serving me very well in everything I do in consulting and helping other businesses or nonprofits. I help a lot of nonprofits. Is to look at it and say, you know what, the plan you have doesn't work. You have some great people here on staff, but you just got the wrong play call. And it's kind of funny. The other day I was doing a podcast interview, and I shared this, and all of a sudden the guy I was interviewing, he started laughing. He goes, you know what, you just solved the problem for me. And I said, well, what is that? He says, well, I can't really say. He says, but we've got a program, and I think it's the right program, but I think we have the wrong person running it. And so it's that simple. That was one of the best lessons that I learned from my coaching days. The other thing I think I shared with you earlier is that to look at everything, that to figure out what the purpose is. And once you figure out the purpose, you'll figure out the process. Mm-hmm. So many people get tied up on the mechanics of how to do it, what to do, mechanism. We call it mechanism. They lose sight of what the process is. The purpose. If you've learned the purpose and you're committed to the purpose, I guarantee you'll figure out the process. You know, the old story where the guy's he's up in the mountains, and he tells his girlfriend, he says, you know, I'd really like to have a kiss. You know, they're parked. And she says, well, I tell you what, if you put the top down so I can see the stars, I'll give you a kiss. And he tells his buddy, he says, you know, 45 minutes, I got that top down. And the guy says, what took you so long? He goes, I don't have a convertible. So he understood the purpose. He had his goal, his clear goal, but he figured out the process. He got that top down. So I think that's another valuable lesson that I've learned is just focus on the purpose, and you'll figure out. Don't get bogged down in the mechanism. And, did you ask me for 3? Yeah.
Was there a book in there?
You know, there is. I got a few more books coming out. Now that I figured out, actually, now that the process has come in play of how to produce these, I have several. You know, I have a nonprofit, and we were helping in this veteran space, but I've really been an entrepreneur my whole life. And I did a show the other day where it was actually entrepreneurs helping veterans be better entrepreneurs. And so most of that interview was all about business, mm-hmm. How to approach that and things to work on. So it's a passion that I have, is helping folks in business and civilians or veterans, and working with them to try to do that. I've got a couple of little pet projects now. I've got a Christian school that I'm working with that's raising money to do construction. So yeah, I think that, yeah, there is another book in there.
Okay. Terrific. 2 quotes.
One quote that I really like is never quit. There's a whole poem by Roger Kipling, but you know, it talks about when you think you're just at the last straw, you know, you never know, with one more blow you can win the fight. So never quit is one of my favorite one. And another one, it's a couple I like, and I don't know if it's a quote or a Bible verse, but
I think you're talking about, would you say Kipling?
Yeah.
I think you're talking about his poem,
Never Quit.
If?
Yeah. If, yeah. There's that other one, If. And then there's, you know, one of the things I'm reminded of a lot of times in where people fit in is, mm-hmm. In the Bible there's a passage, and I think the Apostle Paul wrote it, and he talked about how people feel. In other words, he talks about the body, and he talks about that, how, you know, that not when it's a sum of everything. If you're involved in something, it's a sum of everything. So, you know, the eyes are important, the sense of smell, the brain, the ears, the little toe, they all work together for the sum. And, you know, if you're part of that, you're part of an organization, is to whatever your job is, do your job. You know, it's a Bill Belichick thing. from the Patriots. It's do your job. You do your job 100%. Don't worry about somebody else, and the team will function.
Okay.
So I think that's another. Just do your job. Stay in your lane. Do your job. Do it the best you can do it. And so those are some of the things that over the years have just resonated with me. A lot of it because of the coaching background. But I just think that that's important. I think not quitting. I think that's, just keep driving the process. Stay with it. If you stay in the ball game long enough, eventually you'll win. Right? How many times you ever hear that? There's a game going on and the guys just won't go away, and they win. So I'm a big advocate of that.
Excellent. And one person who's made an impact in your life.
Oh gosh, there's so many. It's a great question, and actually, I think there's probably a book there about how many people have made an impact that have been a positive influence in my life. And I think it also happens at various times. People are put in your life at various times when certain things are going on, and those messages are important. I talked about Dick Vermeil. He was very inspirational for me. I learned a lot about him. When I was at UCLA, there was a joke that went like this. It goes, we would meet and work as coaches from 6 a.m. till midnight, and then the rest of the time was ours to do whatever we wanted. I mean, talk about driven. 6 a.m. to midnight. That's serious. That's what we would do. We'd work on that because we had one objective, and that was to win. So I think he was very important to me. My dad was he had a tough life coming up. His mom died when he was 4 days old, and one day my dad didn't go to work. He was sick, and I was so scared that he was going to die because I never knew my dad not going to work. So that was something that was just, that he had that. He just had that constant, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do my job, and I'm going to do this. So that was important. So I think he was a big influence on me.
Well, that's terrific. Last two questions. One, Tony, is where can people find you? Where can they participate? Where can they contribute?
We're on, I think the best way to find us is helpingheroesusa.org. And I think that another thing is silentbattle.life. That's another URL. But everything happens, our whole portal, everything branches off of, it's helpingheroesusa.org. They can email me or anybody on our staff will respond. We always respond to everybody's emails, and we get involved in a lot of email dialogue. We're all over social media. Whether it's Facebook or Instagram or X or LinkedIn, we're there. So it's easy to reach me.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I'll make sure to put that in the show notes. And final question. What does living a life of impact mean to you?
That's a good one. I'm going to go back to my roots. I think I started coaching Little League Baseball when I was in high school. I actually had a Little League Baseball team. It's kind of strange, but I did. And then becoming a football coach, and then getting involved in business. And I think making an impact on people's lives and helping them and servicing them, be of service. I think that's the most important thing. Is to, I'm involved in a lot of nonprofits, and so being of service and making an impact that you can help somebody and meet them where their needs are at. I think that's really important.
Awesome. Well, Tony, thank you so much for sharing your time, but even more so, thank you for what you're doing for our first responders, for our veterans. Really appreciate it on behalf of them, their families, and myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you so much for helping us get our message out. You're a big part of what we're doing. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.